Tuesday, February 25th, and the time is 6:30 PM, and I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Delory, Webb, Stiegel,
Here.
Onken,
Here?
Caliphate,
Here.
Hauk, Serrato.
Here.
Okay, thank you. We've managed a quorum, so we can continue. Next item is approval of minutes. Consider approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission, February 11th, 2025, regular meeting minutes. We need a motion and a second to approve those.
I make a motion to approve of the minutes for February 11th, 2025.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Serrato and a second from Commissioner Caliphate. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Great, that motion carries. Citizen comment period. The Planning and Zoning Commission welcomes comments from citizens early in the agenda of regular meetings. Speakers are provided with an opportunity to speak during this time on any agenda item or any other matter concerning city business, and they must observe the 3-minute time limit. So at this time, I'll open citizen comments. Okay, seeing none, we'll keep moving. Item number 4, consider and possible action. Consider approval of a conditional use permit regarding the IH 35 overlay regulations for 3 new commercial structures located at 18600 IH 35, Carl City Limits CUP-24-0108. Mr. Lukes.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about 3 separate buildings on 3 lots. I have some site plans, so I'll try and keep it clear for y'all. And then at the end, we will be asking for separate motions on each building just to keep everything clean. The applicant is looking at 4 new commercial buildings, but tonight we're only looking at 3. They have an associated site development plan that's been in review. Staff has approved that. This site has an existing structure already. There's an existing Burger King located on the site. That is not part of tonight's review, but they are looking at adding 3 buildings. Again, building 4 will be touched on at a later date when they get that designed and have an end user. The property is zoned retail services. Again, it's in the I-35 overlay, so that's why we're here tonight to look at the building elevations. So this was a singular lot. It's platted into 3 lots. So lot 1 is kind of the center one. Lot 2 is the bottom left-hand side of the screen, and then lot 3 is on the frontage of IH-35. And then here is kind of the layout of the buildings. So lot 1 has buildings 2 and 3. Building 4 will be later. Lot 2 has building 1, and then lot 3 is existing Burger King. So a little confusing, but hopefully that will clear that up a little bit. So when we look at building 1, this is the proposed auto zone. These elevations there is a mistake on the label, so the right side and left side are actually switched. Commissioner Onken noticed that. Thank you for that. But they are looking at about 42% stone, 64, 57, and 59. Glazing sitting at 16 average, 15, and then 10 on the one side rear. Hardy board makes up 18, 14, 11, 11, and then foam cornices are roughly about the same percentages. So you can see here we have the front elevation and then the east side or right side elevation. This is the rear elevation and the left elevation. Again, left elevation and right are switched on the labels. This door, the main entrance, you'll see will face kind of the interior of the driveway, almost angling towards the Italian food restaurant. So now we're looking at building 2. This is on lot 1. This is an Italian restaurant. So when we're looking at stone, we're about 35 on the front, 22 on sides, and then 32 and 35 on the side, 22 on the rear. Stucco averages 32 across 3 sides. The rear does go up a little bit to 73. And then glazing makes up about 28 to 30% on all sides except the rear. So here's the elevations. Again, you can see some covered patios on either side of the buildings. These are both dining areas that are planning to be utilized. They're not just open space or decorative. And then right and left elevations, again, those are the covered patios. There is some landscaping that's going to be put into those areas. Those were shown on the landscaping plan. Now we're moving on to building 3. This is also on lot 1. This is a proposed specs. So looking at the stone percentages, the front we're at 37, rear 41, and then 23 and 44 on either side. Stucco is hitting about 50% plus on each one. Glazing's around 13%. There is some additional landscaping on the right side. That's the east-facing elevation, so that's the side that you'll see as you're coming down the access road. Didn't skip too far. So here's the front. Again, because this is a retail building, you'll notice there's some trees there in the front. So this building's a little different than most we see. Because of its length, they actually had to have a 10-foot sidewalk out in front, not your standard, and then these trees are placed there, kind of spruce it up a little bit. The rear is the rear of the building. There are some awnings over those man doors. You can see a wing wall there that's going to kind of hide the loading and unloading zone. And then the top image here, again, this one has some additional landscaping on this trellis wall. And then the right side is the interior facing. You can see that overhead door. So again, the top image is what you see as you kind of drive down I-35, and then the overhead door is when you're interior to the site. So when we looked at this, we found the site and landscape plans not only meet, but they do exceed the requirements of the IH-35 overlay. However, the buildings do not meet those requirements. Overlay requirements are generally 90% for masonry. Here, all the buildings are at least 50%. They do provide the appropriate articulation and include the required architectural features, so it's really just those percentages. And then that one set of overhead doors, they do not have the 50% segmented glass. So as always, when we looked at the options for you guys tonight, approve as requested, approve with modifications, or deny the request. At this time, staff's requesting P&Z take action, again, on each individual building. So in case there's some changes on each one, we can get those conditions properly noted. But we are recommending option 2, just based on the fact that the site plans and landscaping meet or exceed, but the masonry is a little bit lower than what is required, and then the segmented glass doors. So option 2 will give you all the opportunity, if y'all have some concerns, to make some additional requests to the building. I can answer any questions you have on the property, but the applicant is here as well, so if you have specific questions for them.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? I have a question about the well, hang on. Did you have any questions before I get going? No? Okay. So our ordinance, the overlay for the I-35 area says 90% masonry. It seems like in this one, they're not able to get to 90%, and I was curious if there was a reason why that number was not able to be reached.
I think we've had some series of conversations with the applicant, but I'd probably turn that one over to the applicant to go into detail on why that is. If that don't mind.
Hi, Commissioners. Julio Cerda. I'm with BK Metro. I'm part owner of BK Metro. We've been working back and forth with the designs on the overlays on this I-35 overlay corridor. We basically came down to something to where was we worked together with staff, in other words, to get to this point. If you'll allow us to work with staff and specs also, because it's going back and forth. So I mean, these are things that we applied as much as possible. We do have the whole building is masonry block, so we did do a lot of windows in the sides that were asked for, so that's where we're at this point.
Okay.
What would you like to, if we can look at the, I guess the.
I'm just trying to understand the logic behind it, because the ordinance says that the stucco would be a detail application, and the way that y'all are getting to the 50% masonry is through the use of stucco. And so that's what I'm trying to understand. I guess it's more of a question for staff that we could look at in the future, not to put y'all on the spot or anything, but more of a question for staff for the future about,
I will say,
how
the
firmly
masonry
we-
percentage you're seeing does not include the stucco, so those are separate. Again, from a staff's perspective, we want to work with applicants. We understand what the code is. We understand what kind of y'all's purview is. And then we kind of understand the history on how it's been applied. So staff is trying to thread that needle between those three things when we do these. Basically, from a staffing standpoint, 50% is the minimum. We won't even consider taking it for approval. After that, we try and get as much as we can. Again, these percentages they could change a little bit depending on how you calculate it. We could take off doors and windows and say, okay, what's left is X percentage of masonry that may kick that up a little bit. This was kind of just broken out by the overall. If that's the direction that the board wants to go, then we could probably put that for discussion on another meeting, but can't get into that too much tonight.
I don't have any other question right now. Anybody else?
So excuse me, the stucco is not being counted as masonry because the overlays is brick and stone, correct?
Correct. So that's why it's broken out separate. Stucco may be from a building material construction standard considered a masonry product like hardy board, hardy plank siding, but in the I-35 overlay, we do not consider that part of a masonry design.
I mean, honestly, with development that we've had going on, everyone's pretty much come up here compliant, so I would like to see modifications made. It's in place for a reason.
Can we speak to specific modifications?
You can talk to the applicant, I guess, and ask.
I think if you don't mind, if we can do kind of general questions overall,
Okay.
get those knocked out, and then as we get into each building, if those are some specific requests, just that way it's easier for us to kind of take notes and make sure our motions are aligned.
That's a reasonable request.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions at this time for staff? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion then to approve the conditional use permit for Building 1. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay, motioner by myself, Chairperson Onken, and a second from Vice Chair Stiegel. Now we can have discussion on this one. Any thoughts?
This is not currently compliant, right, with the 90%?
No, this one's a little bit lower. I think it's just visually the way the building's broken up. It looks like a lot more than it is. So again, when you're dealing with percentages over the all, you're taking in cornices and eaves and things like that. So, from the eye test, this is there. But if y'all feel otherwise, then staff is here to work with y'all and make sure we're getting what you guys want.
The faux windows?
I do not believe these are shadow box windows. Is that correct? These are real windows. Is that? Real windows. Yeah. Yeah. There was some discussion at first on some window placements, but these will be full windows.
Even where on the drawing it has an arrow and it says faux window? Like the black boxes are real windows? Because it says faux.
I can't see. I don't have my glasses.
It's
I'm
really
sorry.
tiny, yeah.
What is a faux window?
They're what we call shadow boxes. So there are sensitive areas in some of these facilities where they don't always want the glass opening, so it looks like a window, and they put those on there, and they're tinted just so folks don't have easy access. So generally, we see them sometimes in restricted areas on the side of some buildings, or if there's restrooms on that side and they're requesting a window and it doesn't make sense to put those there, that's where we've seen them.
Any other discussion on the motion?
I'd just like to have this clarity. On the left elevation, those are double doors, double steel doors?
Yes, on the main entrance, yes. I have not seen the plans, so I don't know if they're full open or if they're, I don't think they're going to be French. I think they'll have a center separator.
Okay. Any other discussion on this motion? Okay, all All those in favor of approving the conditional use permit for Building 1, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, that motion passes. Okay. Did anyone want to bring a motion for Building 2 or 3? I guess we don't have to go in order.
I'll bring a motion to approve Building 2 with modification. Can I say that?
Oh, yes.
Could you clarify the modification for the motion?
Yeah, so on Building 2, my concern here is the back of the restaurant faces a pretty public area, including the parking lot and the specs entrance. And, you know, this building doesn't meet the masonry requirement, and I think in this case, I think we should consider increasing the masonry on the backside. I look at the way specs is designed on the backside, it has masonry bands kind of going throughout the facade, and I think including some feature like that to increase the aesthetic appeal and not just have the stucco and wainscot would make this building more aesthetically pleasing when you're there, because it's not back to another building or a field. It is a pretty public line of sight, and I think increasing the masonry in there would be something that would be beneficial.
And I'll have to turn it over to the applicant, but just for clarification, so are you asking for the pilasters similar to that?
That's correct.
I feel good.
Thank you, Julio Sardo again. Yes, sir, would be willing to work with, now, as close as the others are, maybe something workable, is that good?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just need to, you know, I leave it up to the staff to kind of see what looks reasonable there. But I think I don't know the spacing or the distance necessarily, but something that would at least bring some more aesthetic appeal. I mean, I see the control joints here in the stucco. You could do something following that, but something reasonable to increase it.
Okay, as long as, I'm assuming you're okay with staff doing that and not bringing this back for those reviews? If that's the case, just add that to the as part of your final motion.
Do we have a second on the motion? Sorry.
Yeah, I'll
Second.
second.
You did. Okay.
So we have a motion to conditionally approve the CUP for Building 2 with the modification of masonry pilasters, or the addition of masonry pilasters to be approved by city staff. Okay. So that's our motion for Building 2. Any discussion on that?
I would agree with that. It just escaped me that we've made one modification already, but I personally would like to see the utilities on the back screened as well, not just painted, but screened. Looks like there's quite a bit of traffic in this area on foot and otherwise, so the back of blank buildings just aren't that appealing. I don't think it takes that much more to dress it up a little bit and screen over the utility panels. So we have a motion on the floor. I would not care to amend that motion, but if you would discuss that, perhaps staff and the builder, to see what may be possible, that might be one choice to make.
Okay, so you don't want to put it into the motion, it's just a suggestion for
It's a
staff.
suggestion. It's, I don't want to modify that particular motion, but I think that's one more detail that we could consider.
I mean, staff will be willing to work with the applicant on that. I would say that if y'all feel strongly about it, that it should be made part of the motion so that it's memorialized. I mean, I think we have good direction, but I feel better if everybody's comfortable with that. I believe the applicant is amenable to that. And we had some of those discussions prior. It was just chosen to go with option A, which is the camouflaging, so to speak, versus the screen walls.
What is the screening that you discussed, just for my own?
Several ways that they do it. I don't know if there's a good one here, but on the specs, you see that kind of trellis with the lattice. We've seen some people do that, and they do kind of either metal panels or wood slats with metal frames. I mean, it just depends on the building itself. But it's just basically a little wing wall that stands up, and you have to have some clearance from the building because obviously you have to meet electrical code. You have to have 5-foot clearance around to get access. But other than that, we can work there. I think there may be, we may need to have some flexibility on this. I can't remember what kind of sidewalk clearance.
I think the sidewalk is right there. That's what I was concerned
so
about.
It may
when-
make it a little difficult to get that clearance without modifying the sidewalk, but again, if you want it, we can make it part of the motion. We can work with the applicant to see if we need to reroute the sidewalk around it or maybe work in some additional landscaping in that area. But there's definitely options.
Amendment to the motion to have staff work with the applicant to have a screen over the utility boxes to that elevation, the rear elevation of the building.
Okay. And we need a second for the amendment, I believe.
Second.
Okay, so we have an amendment to have staff work with the applicant to have, to add screening over the utility boxes on the rear. Seconded, or motion from Vice Chair Stiegel, seconded by Commissioner Serrato. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Okay.
If we have to reroute the sidewalk or do something drastic like that, I'm not sure. Sometimes when we make modifications to try to make one thing better, it ends up kind of backfiring and making it look worse than it initially would have. So I'm just concerned if I don't know how that's going to work with screening right there with the sidewalk.
The screening I have seen previously hasn't extended that far from the building. What are you imagining, Mr. Lutz?
I mean, maybe on some of them, they had some type of hinge mechanism that they were able to pull that away. I don't have any details on ones that we've utilized. There are possibilities. I mean, that was one, and, you know, I'm sure there's other options there. Again, as long as we can kind of explore that screening wall, it just would have to meet building code. That's really only our concern. And I think if the motion is to work with, I think the motion was fairly not vague, but flexible to work with him. And maybe if we can't make it work, we could go back. I think that's what I'm hearing from you guys, so.
Yes, my concern is that utility boxes are ugly, for sure, but I share the concern that we've got a lot of stucco here, which I like as a building material, actually. And trying to dress this up a little, even from that side of the building, seems to be appealing, literally. So the pilasters and then screening that was part of my vision in any case.
I have a question about the screening. So if we were to add some sort of screening there and it needed the 5-foot clearance, it looks like the sidewalk is on the rear of the building and there's a back door there. I'm assuming that's where they're going to be taking out the waste from the restaurant. And so if you've got a big rolling bin, having to navigate around like a curve in the sidewalk seems like it would maybe be problematic.
Yeah,
Is
my
this-
thought is it would most likely be some type of hinge mechanism
To
that,
keep it flat.
yeah, so that it's flush up against, think of a flat screen TV on the back of that building. You'd be able to pull it out, move it, and then push it back, and you wouldn't have any interference.
Okay.
Again, I'd have to work with the architect and go through that process, but I think we're pretty clear on what you guys, you don't want any ugly electrical boxes out there, so.
Yeah.
The applicant raised a hand.
Can you go back to the overall site plan? and I know it'll be a little tough to see here, but you can see there behind the restaurant, there's that triangular piece right in front of that parking. So there'd be options there to make the utilities in that location, have the screening wall there, and not have to modify the sidewalk or anything like that. So we should have the room to be able to move that around.
Very good.
Cool.
Withdraw the motion.
Withdraw the motion.
If the,
Well, I think you wanted to keep the motion so that
Okay.
we work with it,
okay,
but we do have a
We got it.
motion and a second that's on the floor.
I think we left enough flexibility to figure something out.
Okay. Okay, so we've got an amendment for the motion again, and this is to have staff and the applicant work together to find a way to get screening over the utility boxes. Is there any other discussion on that, or shall we vote? All those in favor of the amendment to the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay, so we have an amended motion, and the motion is to approve the CUP for Building 2 with the addition of masonry pilasters on the rear facade approved by the planning department staff. Any discussion on this part of the motion?
I would just make a comment, and that is that I think that given our overlay, that we're being generous. Just asking for pilasters, and that's one reason I asked for the screen, what's the overall appearance of the building? There's going to be a lot of traffic in that area of all kinds, and I appreciate masonry. Stucco is a masonry product, and I've used it myself. But by overlay standards, we've got to be honest, we're going way under those standards. And that's why I'm being a little fussy myself, is just not to be fussy, but let's clean this up and make it attractive, stucco or not.
Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. And for Building 3, last but not least, would anyone like to bring a motion for this one?
I bring a motion to approve this building.
Okay. We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Califoot. I will second that. Discussion on this. Anybody, any thoughts?
Yes, overhead door. So the overhead door here is eastern facing, and it is,
Yeah, if you look on this image, right where the B3 label is, that little cutout
west.
point, that's that loading zone area in the back of the building. So it does face the interior pond, and then it's screened from Burger King with the wing wall on that one side, just so you can orientate yourself to the side.
Yeah, that was a big part, was the orientation, because I noticed that there is screening for that loading area, and it's supposed to take a couple of pretty big trucks back there. And the configuration on the left or west elevation doesn't seem to conform with what we see on that plan. Because I don't know how you're going to back into a door in that location.
It looks like the two turning movements will work, so if you follow around on Lot 3, again, I'll defer to the civils on the site plan, but, so you're gonna come in on that far western, Plan West driveway, comes around and curves north on the Burger King. There should be sufficient turn radius to move that into that back, but if you have concerns, then I'll turn it over to the civil.
So we have used the AASHTO turning radius or turning movement, which is I guess your design vehicle turn movement. And so we have used those and laid them into the site. And so you are able to maneuver to, I believe, WB 67. So those are fairly large 18-wheelers to be able to maneuver back there.
And you're backing up to a dock.
Yes, sir.
So that was the hard thing for me to see, is that it looked like on the elevations that it was, let me get this up here. Yeah, it looked as if it were flush with the west wall, and there's no representation of a screening wall there.
So they're on so you can see the wing wall or the screening wall right there on the lower elevation, there towards the kind of middle on the right side. And then when you go to the elevation looking from the or looking towards the door, there's the wall there on the very west side, and then where you see I guess you can see the masonry going up towards the middle, that's the other side, the cut back. So that's the width of the loading zone through there.
Okay, thank you.
Kind of curious, can you go back to the front side of the building? Where it is that darker color where it says specs, is there any way that could even be stone? There's just so much stucco on that front side.
This is basically very heavy. If we start putting some stone up there, it'll structurally it would be kind of difficult to work with, to be honest with you. No, I don't think that it would be possible to put some stone up there as far as the amount of weight that,
Above the spec sign.
yeah. So if you like, would work with staff to see what is it that we can work around there as much as we can, possible.
And I think for clarification, so you're talking the whole main entrance, that parapet center portion you're looking at stone to basically just match the end caps, is that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, if that's part of the motion, staff could work with them. This one's probably a little less cut and dry, I think, and so I don't know that this, I'd have to have some parameters at least on what you guys would consider acceptable. I do agree that weight will cause some internal structural changes. I'm not saying that it can't be done. I don't know what those are, most likely spans and beams, headers. But to give staff some flexibility, I'd kind of at least like to know, hey, maybe it's 50% of that, or maybe it's a center swath with a wainscot, or maybe it's the top cap and the bottom cap. I'm really just spitballing right now, so.
I have a thought on that. So for the building 2 that we just approved, at their entrance for the building, the far left and the far right of the building entrance were stone. Would that significantly affect the cost or the weight of the structure to do that sort of flanking on the specs entry?
I'm sorry, my ADHD and the train didn't help.
I totally understand. Been there. I was just asking if we were to do kind of the flanking of the stone all the way up, the way it's done on building 2, on the entrance for building 3, would that significantly affect the cost for you or the structure weight for
That
you?
would, yes, that would actually work, and instead of redesigning the whole structural end of that parapet coming out, that would
That'd be
definitely,
more feasible.
yes.
Okay.
That would make most these buildings tie in a little bit better as well. So kind of imagine.
Comment and observation about all 3, though 2 have been voted on and approved. And that is, we've run into the situation where certain things cannot be changed because, and not just in this particular instance, but in other situations we've seen, because weight cannot be borne by the current structure and so forth. I think I would be amazed to see the day that somebody reads the overlay first and then designs their building so that they can, actually build out with stone and brick. That does not seem to be impossible if you're reading what this is first. Just comment and observation.
So I'm going to make an amendment to the motion to add the stone on the entryway for building 3 to match the style of that on building 2. The end caps, sure. I don't know what the official term is. End cap sounds great, though. Is there a second for that amendment?
Yeah, I second that.
Okay, so a motion to amend by myself and a second from Commissioner Serrato. Is there any discussion on that amendment?
Not on that particular piece, but I'm just curious if anyone has any concerns on the side of the specs that faces the highway.
Okay. Let's go ahead. I'm going to just close that motion
Okay.
that we just had, or the amendment to the motion, and then we can discuss that, that thought. All those in favor of approving the amendment to the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, so that's in Mr. Califoot.
My question was, do we have any concern with the amount of masonry on the I-35 side? I mean, I think this generally looks how a specs typically looks, but I know we're low on the masonry, and I don't know if we have, as a group, concern with the way it looks facing the highway, since it's the most public side of the building.
Historically, I've had a big concern with that. You know, with people driving by and all they see is a blank face of a wall does not speak well to Kyle and its personality. We have a great deal of fast food and other kinds of facilities along the I-35 corridor, and we may not impress everybody because I know the kind of businesses that move in on interstate corridors. Nevertheless, I don't think we need blank walls. I would agree with that. Again, solutions, what's allowable or possible with this particular design, I don't know, but certainly architectural features would be useful to break up that wall.
So
I'm
this
just-
wall is the thinner side of the building, and I'm assuming that you would want something in lieu of the trellis. Is that maybe kind of where the discussion is going, or would you still? Because you do have the same kind of options. There's pilasters you could do. This is kind of the short side. I don't know that you'd get a lot, maybe 2 in there before it kind of got crowded. Your other option is possibly raise the wainscot a little bit up that wall. I think that one was, if I remember right, 36 inches from the ground. So maybe you go up 42, 48 or higher. But if those are maybe some options you're thinking, those are probably the quickest as far as kind of doing that right now.
I have a question about the green wall and in general. I like green walls. I think they're cool, but I'm concerned about making sure that it stays green and happy and lush and pretty. And I didn't see that. I just pulled up the landscape plan. I don't see it on the landscape plan. What was that supposed to be, and how do we make sure it gets watered?
I don't know that trellis had been added to the landscape plan. I think it was added just kind of to the building itself. So we would have to update the site plan to show any irrigation that may be in that area. But you're right, vegetative-wise, we'd have to look at maybe specifying evergreens or something like that, low drought. I think we all know the watering situation and at our peak times, peak demands, if we don't get rain. So, I'll turn that back over to the applicant, kind of fine-tune and discuss those options for that side.
Yeah. And was that intended to, is that the utility wall on this side? Or was that just for decorative purposes?
No, this was to try and do some, staff knew that this was the side facing I-35
Okay.
and it was a little bit light on stone. And so we were kind of working with them on options and this was what was proposed. So there's no electrical that will be shown on this side.
Okay.
Short answer to the chairwoman is basically yes. We'll make sure that the civil engineer and the architect work together and the landscape architect to put it together for the landscape, basically. to do
Plan,
the-
site plan.
Yeah, the irrigation that
Okay.
they need to do.
Okay. Do we need to put that into the motion, or is it
No, I mean,
Separate.
this will be required.
For the site plan.
As part of this, as part of the building elevation itself, so they will have to maintain that
Okay.
throughout the life. I think for me, concern when we talk vegetative walls is after a hard freeze, wintertime, I mean, the reality is it's not gonna be green. There's another option, our code does allow, artificial flowers. I don't know if you'd want to consider that. They fade, but the code does allow landscaping to be artificially and done in certain areas. So I think you have options available if you want a green screen year-round, or if you just want that to go away and you want to talk masonry. I think those are your two best bets.
Is anyone opposed to, I mean, the green wall is great. I just thinking about the reality of it now, this time of year after a freeze and stuff, I don't know what that's gonna look like, but it's probably gonna look like all of our grass does currently. You have something?
I know it's a little bit more expensive, but we're amenable to work with the artificial. It's really nice. I know that nowadays they're making it to last a little longer than usual, so. But the expensive side it is.
So I'm open to the use of artificial there, and then we don't have people in the city saying, why did you approve a green wall and they have to water that? So an artificial wall on that space would work. And because of the orientation of that wall, it's not gonna get that western baking hot sun, so it might last longer than it would have on the other side of the building. So I think that's a reasonable plan. But of course, other people.
What's the purpose of the canopy there? Is it just to cover the patio, or the sidewalk? Or break up the facade? What's the intent behind the canopy?
That little line right above your trellis. I actually don't think that's a canopy. I think that's a support structure for the trellis, because it doesn't show up on the side elevations. It may be a small one. I'd have to go through the plans.
Okay.
I will say, if y'all are considering, again, you have options. You could do both. You could ask to raise some of the brick on the edges to go a little higher and then add that green. I do want to let y'all know that our code that allows the artificial does have requirements for replacement when it's fading or dirty or looks bad. So this won't be something that can just be set and forget. So that will be something that they can replace.
We're amenable to work with staff on going from 36 inches to 48, I guess. Is that-
Yeah, something like that. I'm assuming 48, I'm talking standard construction practices. This building's a little bit larger than that, so I don't know, maybe it's 56, but I think as long as the applicant's willing to work with us, we just need the direction. Is it one, the other, and/or a combination of both that you would prefer? Then we can have those conversations.
Are we talking 48 on the wainscot?
Yes.
Okay. It's listed on the side elevation as 48 inches currently.
Okay, then we would have to go higher. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was 36 or 48.
Are we talking about raising it only on one side?
I think if you would raise the wainscot, you'd probably want to keep it consistent.
I would say you'd match it all the way
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, okay.
Can we go?
I'm not as concerned about the west side of it, because there's a lot of parking there, and it doesn't face the highway. For me personally, I would like to continue the pilasters all the way around the building and keep some sort of consistency on the front and the sides and with the other buildings. The green wall doesn't do a whole lot for me. I think keeping the masonry and making a nice, clean aesthetic appeal that's always going to look the same would look better in my personal opinion. I'm not sure how, the architect would have to figure out how to work it around the signage to make it look nice, but I would like to see the masonry pilasters continue on the sides.
I would support that.
Can I
Yes, sir.
jump in real quick? And I understand your question there, but the hard part is not, is the signage. And you said it exactly. It's the signage that, you can see specs. That's basically what we got throughout all the buildings that we got with specs. But that's the biggest problem and the concern. I think if you don't mind, if we can work with staff on heightening the 48 inches to possibly 6 more inches to 52 and do a little bit more over the 50% mark of the masonry. And again, going back to masonry and stucco, we grew up with masons, and that's what we would call, and I think that's part of.
Well, sorry, I realized I didn't announce myself further. I'm Karch Bickham. I'm with Quattro Consultants. We're the engineer on the project. So it does allow, obviously, for stucco and detail applications, which in the I-35 district overlay, which I realize is, I think, a 30% max is what y'all want to see for detail, right?
Yeah,
Generally. So which I think some of this exceeds that, but obviously, if we can.
Yeah, work together and
Yeah.
do something. We can add a little bit more on the sides and do a little 6 inches, maybe a couple pilasters.
Pilasters on the west side.
West side's no problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think it says it's an 87-foot length wall, so it probably doesn't look like it on this drawing here, but I'm sure there's considerable amount of room to get a little creative with it.
I think as long as staff has the flexibility and kind of some clear direction, I think we can get that done. I will be clear on the sign that we're not permitting the sign tonight as part of this, so it may or may not be that large. They'd have to meet our sign code, so Kayla will look at that as a separate permit. So it may be that sign shrinks down a little bit. You've got enough room for a couple of pilasters on each side. And so I think for staff, if we're going to go pilasters, then I just need to know, are we also going to talk increasing wainscoting, or is that one or the other? And then does the screen wall get shortened between the pilasters, still for some added? Just some things to consider. Again, I know we're doing a lot at the dais, but I do need some general kind of parameters.
I'll play architect for a second. Maybe this is just a comment, maybe if we had 2 pilasters on either side of the screen wall and then reduce the screen wall to fit in between there as some additional feature or something along those lines as a guideline to go by. Any comments to that, or just, I don't know how to give a clear direction on percentage of masonry. I'm just trying to see more of it and make it look.
I mean, you could
Nicer.
just say you want 90. I mean,
Yes.
I think, yeah, it's just, if it's one or the other for us. I don't want to try and go back and forth with the architect and get something that isn't in y'all's vision. I'd also, like to keep the project moving forward, but if this one needs to come back, then maybe this one needs to come back, if we can't get some good parameters on that.
So my thoughts are, I really don't think pilasters would add anything on that side that's facing 35. Pilasters are fine. We have them on other sides of the building. But because this is the side of the building that people are going to be driving by on the feeder road or through the parking lot, I think the green wall is really unique and a very interesting feature to dress up this wall. And I also like the kind of support structure canopy that goes over it. I think it fills that blank wall nicely. And I mean, maybe the signage will look different or be smaller or something, but I think it fills the wall nicely, and it's a unique look right there close to the interstate that would make more of a statement about Kyle than pilasters. So I wouldn't change that wall at all. That's going to be how I vote.
Does code enforcement have any jurisdiction over green space against the walls, green screens?
I'm sorry, what was that, sir?
Does code enforcement have any authority over green screens?
Yes, we would. So it is part of required landscaping. So just like any landscaping that gets installed, when those die, say street trees or something like that, they are required to replace those. That's part of the overall site plan. So if they drove by and saw that a hailstorm came through and those were artificial flowers and they were just torn up, then we would send them a letter. They would have to be replaced. Whether fake or real, we have those standards on plantings. Now, we don't have a lot of code officers, just FYI.
But we're going to have Kyle 311.
Different problem. Yeah.
But it is something in their purview, yes.
Okay. Any other discussion on this motion?
I really wanted the whole wall to be masonry, but I was trying to be workable with pilasters, so I'd like to see the whole wall as masonry personally.
Right. Again, for myself, there's a lot of fussiness here tonight over these plans, particularly this one. And I'm not feeling particularly cranky, but I do feel the friction between the I-35 overlay and what is put in front of me, not just in this case. And we understand that somebody has to come to you in the first place and say, what is the code here, right? And I-35 overlay applies. I don't know why the design wouldn't be done to that purpose. And I think that what we're doing tonight then is, excuse my language, but fussing about green walls and, pilasters and things like that, where we wouldn't even be having this conversation if there was more conformity with the I-35 overlay anyway. I happen to know or recall during my time here that we approved an applicant who has a pizza restaurant up near Kohler's Crossing and I-35 frontage. And my recollection is that that's 100% masonry, and that's a fairly small chain, all red brick. And red's not my preference, frankly. That's just a style thing with me. Was raised with it and don't like it. But nevertheless, I think that, that's what's at issue here. If a small guy can do it, other people can do it. That's really where I'm at with this whole thing. Sitting here and fussing, and it's not us not knowing what we're doing. I think we get boxed into a corner here where really we're losing sight of what the bigger picture would be in terms of Kyle development. So I want to take this out to the 30,000-foot view. We got a comp plan, we've got the overlay, we've got all these different things that are supposed to inform us, in particular the Planning and Zoning Commission, as to how we go forward with development in this city. And I just don't see how we can do that if incrementally we're, getting tread upon this way. I just don't quite see it. We've already passed 2. 3, I think, is my limit. Frankly, I just can't see that these are all commercial businesses. All of them are chains. Yes, there are many things you can't change. You can't change them on your plan the way you present them in every other community. I've said this before. Why isn't it unique to Kyle? Be a hard guy about it. If you want to do business in Kyle, can you not conform to what the Kyle standards are? Now, I know that's hard for some ears to hear because this is a site that would generate retail income, but nevertheless, we have an overlay or we don't have an overlay.
So where do we go from here?
We have a motion on the floor, table, ceiling. So we can take a vote or we can continue discussion. We can modify.
Can I just try to help? Former city manager, so I know exactly what you guys are going through. I'd like to work with you. I mean, that's what we're here for. We're probably smaller than that pizza place there. I promise you, we're a pretty small company. but I like to work with you. I mean, whatever, I just like to see if all buildings along us, you know, our neighbors also would basically be in conformant. And I think this is as close as conforming with our neighboring plaza to the south of us. But whatever the commission desires at this point, on this elevation, we'd like to work with you and see what, I mean, working with staff to increase the amount of masonry that we have. Again, going back on masonry, on the brick that we have currently, I'd love to increase it, work with staff. If you can give that direction to staff or to us, at this point, it's up to you guys. But I know how difficult it is to be in the Planning and Zoning Commission and get to this point. But we work with you, whatever you guys call at this point, basically.
Well, I know in one particular instance with the load on the foundation, you can't work with us because that's just a given the design engineering at this point.
That's
So
correct.
what would be your first thought of what you could do?
I really like, can we go to that? I really like that green space. I'm not too much of a green guy because I'm a civil engineer, so I like concrete everywhere. But showing what we got and then putting some pilasters there, additional to what we have, and then working with a sign, whatever ordinance or code that you have on signs, just work around it basically. But increasing the amount of concrete masonry that we have on the bottom from side to side of the building, that would be great.
Theoretically, why would increasing the masonry on this side of the wall change the foundation?
Well, isn't that what you had said, is the structure of the foundation?
It's a structure.
4 sides. And it would be on all 4 sides as well.
So we're talking inexpensive solutions, another green wall.
Well, not necessarily, sir. I'm going with what we have.
Right.
You asked me, so I'm working with you to see if we can add some more masonry pilasters
Yes.
going up and working around the sign.
So you're kind of stuck with us. Stuck with us for the
We're
time
we're
being.
all together stuck on this.
Yes, and I would like to pry myself loose of this by just saying that I agree with Commissioner Serrato, really, as I've seen him seem to affirm tonight that it would be great not to have this conversation at all. And you've made an appeal to other buildings and developments nearby as being consistent with what you're offering us here. I would say that's a problem because we've got this creep going on, and I'm in favor of either changing the overlay or something more from a 30,000-foot strategic view rather than this incremental nibbling away at what our standards are. That's my general opinion. It obviously applies to many more things than we're talking about with you this evening. It would seem to me we've got to make some decision about the minimum of what we want tonight, and that's what we would vote on, okay? So that being the case, we can have a motion and have that seconded and then vote upon that. We've got one more building, though, that's an example of how it was done differently in the overlay. You see, this is the situation we're in as a commission. And I do have a problem with that. We have a motion on the floor? With a second. And I would make an amendment to this, that the motion be, consideration be tabled at this time for further discussion.
I'm not sure we would want to go with table, maybe postpone if you wanted to go to a further date. I'm assuming
Okay.
I'm
That would be
assuming
fine.
your thoughts are is you want to see some changes but y'all just aren't sure what those changes are.
And we can't do a tap dancing around here on the floor tonight from the dais.
Yeah, I would definitely say any action on this one be tabled to, postponed to another date. I don't think there's a legal notice requirement on this. I just want to make sure that we're not kind of tabling it indefinitely.
What I can offer, I know that, what I would not like is basically hold back a project like this, especially going back to specs and telling them that we have to hold off another, we're trying to see if we can open by the end of the year. What I can offer is basically just put some more masonry down, we're not seeing the same screen. Well, basically just,
Is this, which one do you want to see?
no, that same elevation. Because this is all we're talking about right now, right? Am I correct? So what I like to offer is just basically bring the masonry all the way down to the green space. Basically just cover everything and just work around the sign again. And leave that stucco basically only above only where the sign is basically right now at this point.
Well, there's some degree of technicality to that I'm not sure I could address except in the most general way. The technicalities, I can't really. I would prefer to then postpone this for 2 weeks until our next regularly scheduled meeting, give the staff and the applicant time to work through these details without having to try to work it out from the dais and the podium.
So
We've got a motion on the floor.
to the motion, right? So I think you would have to second this amendment, which is almost replacing the original motion.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
If we table it, what are we wanting them to come back with in 2 weeks from now? Because right now, we're presented a building that's basically 50% masonry. So if we're going to comply with the standard, it'd basically redesigning the entire facade of this building. Otherwise, 2 weeks from now, we come back and we're having a very similar conversation, having exceptions.
I agree with you. That's why I think that generally, the outline of what we're talking about is clear with the pilasters, green screens or not. We're really stifled with any kind of invention here, is my concern. 2 weeks at least allows staff and then us on further consideration to take a look at this and go, oh yeah, that will work. I'm just suggesting we can't solve that here now so that we actually postpone it with due consideration of your timetable for the year noted. I don't think 2 weeks has to be that costly a delay, in my view. So if you can vote against that, and that's fine with me, by all means. But as you can all hear, I'm really rather disappointed and tired of being put in this situation, frankly. That's it. So there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I actually had a quick question. So, like if you can go to the other photo of the building, how it has those, like the strips of stone like that, is there any way you could do that on those sides?
I can. And that's what I'm trying to offer.
Yeah.
Working around the actual.
Kind of break it up a little bit so those look like big blobs of stucco?
Yeah. We can. I just want to make sure that if you allow me, if this is approved tonight, if you allow me, I can come up with it, send it to specs, prove it, send it back to staff, and we go from there. That would be excellent. I can work with working some of those columns.
I think that would be better.
Okay.
What do I do? What?
So I think the amendment maybe fails for lack of second, and then it would go back to the original motion, which is, Debbie?
Sarah?
The motion was to approve the conditional use permit for Building 3, and it was amended to include the modifications to the front entry
And Kathy.
to add end cap masonry. So that was the motion.
And it does, that motion, I think, did give staff the flexibility to work on that, so I think I'm understanding. You like the green, want more stone, we're good with pilasters, and they'll make it happen. Right?
Under that motion, the motion that we have, is it just addressing the front facade? So can we approve that and then create a second one to address the sides of the building, or do we amend that motion? 'Cause-
Amend it.
Amend it? Okay. So then, can I ask to amend that?
Go for it.
Okay. I would like to amend that motion to increase the masonry on both sides. Preferably, I would like to see the side that has the spec sign full masonry, and I would be satisfied seeing pilasters on the interior elevation. That is my amendment. If anyone cares to second that.
Would we be getting rid of that green space if we went ahead and did masonry? I mean, I'm okay with that, because the masonry is, to me, it's gonna look pretty, honestly.
You like the green space?
It's your amendment, however you want to do it.
I'm just trying to get closer to the standards to allow us to move forward today without delaying it 2 weeks and still get closer to what our standards call for. I still don't think we would be quite there, but I think I mean, we've gotten this far and we've approved the other 2 buildings. This gets it probably the most significant revision we've asked for today.
Yep.
And I find it reasonable, whether we have the green screens or not, I don't really have an opinion on them, to be honest. I would probably not have put them there in the first place, but that's just my preference. So could we just not vote on the green screens and allow it up to the design team to make that decision? I don't know how much of a modification that is.
I mean, I think the motion was 100% masonry on that side.
Yeah, well, we still don't have a second for the amendment, but I think you can further amend to allow the applicant options on the green screens if you want to do that as well. But or you can revise your amendment to include that in there. Either way, but yes, you have options.
What was the option that I
So
get?
you're-
Defer to the design team to make that decision on the
Yeah,
green screen?
so,
Allow the flexibility for the staff and the,
Yeah, if I'm understanding, your amendment is to preferably to have the east elevation with the spec sign include masonry on the whole thing. If not, you'd be okay with them duplicating some of the pilasters that they have on the other 2 sides of elevations, both on the east and west elevations, and you're open to having the applicant decide whether or not the green screen works for them with the modifications and changes to the elevations.
I couldn't have said it myself, so you said it the best, yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's the motion to amend. Is there a second on that?
Yeah, second.
Okay, second from Commissioner Serrato. Now we can have discussion on the long motion amendment that I will not restate because it's a lot of words. But basically 100% masonry or pilasters, and then giving discretion to staff and the applicant to work out whether or not a green space works on that.
100% masonry on
On
the
east wall.
east elevation,
East elevation,
correct?
yeah. Discussion on that one? Okay, I'm just gonna say, I do not like an option that doesn't have green space on the wall. I think pilasters on that wall would be snooze fest, anywhere USA. I think green wall is fun, fresh, funky, and I want the green stuff. So, this motion will not be one that I vote to approve the amendment because it risks losing that green wall. So that's how I'm gonna vote on it, but the rest of the gang can, of course, do as they feel led.
So it would get left out in the details, the green wall. You're afraid it would get left out?
Well, the way that it's worded is that if we can't do 100% masonry on that east elevation, that pilasters would be an acceptable alternative. And then the green wall is discretionary, it's up for the judgment of the designer, and I would just rather
Well-
keep it the way it is.
What if it's 100% masonry or pilasters with a green wall? I mean, that's two different things, but I think we either pick one or the other.
I don't think pilasters are gonna add anything here. I think it would make it look too busy with the green wall and the pilasters and the big sign. I think there would be way too much going on this wall. That's my brain. But I'm one vote. There's four of us. Yep. Any other discussion on the amendment to the motion? Okay, all those in favor of approving that amendment to the motion, please say aye. All opposed say nay. Nay. Okay, so that motion passes, so we have an amended motion to approve. Any other discussion on that motion? Okay, let's vote. All those in favor of approving the amended motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Great, that motion passes. Thank you guys for your patience tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, I believe we have reached the end of what was on our agenda for today. We have no other business that we are permitted to discuss, so we are adjourned at 7:41.